All right, last time we finished up talking about how to insert data into an existing table, so I just want to review that real quick. And then we've got just a couple of quick topics on deleting and updating, and we'll be done. So I'm guessing this is not much more than maybe half an hour here, depending on the number of questions you have and depending on how verbose I get. So I'll try to keep it short here. All right, I have a different version of Alexa Mara in here. It's already filled. Don't worry about that. The examples that I'm doing will still work. One of the most valuable commands you'll learn is the select star from command. This allows you to see everything that's in a specific table. So I'm going to take a look at marina slips. And again, this is the final version of it. I will give that to you later as in next unit. But there's all the data, and if I want to put more data in here, I've got a couple of different commands that I can use. I think actually, let me see if I can simplify this. What's in owners? Is that simpler? Not really. Looking for a simple table. It's probably marinas. Nope, that's complicated too. Slip service categories should be pretty small. Yep. So let's take a quick look at service categories. You probably don't have them yet, so don't worry. Did we create a service categories table for you guys in class? I'm not looking at Val. I'm looking at the rest of you. Service requests, but not categories. Okay. So tell you what, that's a good practice. Let's build it. Okay, I'm just looking to see what mine is so I don't mess mine up anymore here. For you all to create this, we're going to create a table. Create table service categories. And remember, when you're using MySQL, capitalizing table names is a waste of time because MySQL will make them all lowercase. Then inside here, we need to designate the fields. And before I do that, I need to do one more thing. I'm sorry. All right, so inside here we designate the fields. We first designate the field name, and you can see from mine there that the first one is a category ID and it's an int. Is that backwards? Too many languages running in my head. Create table field name type. Nope, so that's right. Int. It's going to be my primary key, and it's going to be an auto increment key. And then we also have the category description. These, by the way, should be camel case, especially when you create them, because whatever case you make them when you create them sticks. It's possible to go back and rename them, but it's much easier to do it here. And this one is going to be a varchar field of 50. Varchar meaning a variable size string. That's the list of my fields, so I can end it there. Now you should be able to press Control Enter and it should create your table. Now I already have one, so maybe I'll just put a 2 on here. That way it'll create mine too. All right, and down here I got my green check mark. Everything's cool. And here's my service. It's not on my list. Where is it? Remember, if you want to see it in the schemas when you add, you have to refresh. So there's my service category 2. We then learn to describe. A table. And then what I want to talk about today is how to insert stuff in here. So the service categories are really just about oil changes, tune-ups, engine repair, or whatever we're going to call them. These are just ways to create a lookup so that these are the types of services that we provide. When we insert into the database, there are two different ways. Are we ready? Everybody got the describes and the create ready to go? Not hearing any complaints. So here's insert command version 1. You insert, use the keyword insert into and then the table name, then the keyword values, and then in parentheses the list of values that you want to insert into every single field in the table. Whoever's dropping water, can you turn that off? Thank you. This won't work for this table. And it doesn't work for very many tables, particularly tables that have auto number fields, because we do not want to insert a value into the auto number field. And when you use this version of the insert command, you must insert something into every single field, including the auto number field. That's not good. This version of the insert command would really only work in ours here for the service requests, because the service request doesn't have an auto number field. Every other table has an auto increment field. So this command would only be useful for service requests. The second version of the command is a little more flexible. It allows you to designate which fields you want to fill and in what order. If you use that first version of the command, you must fill the fields in the order that they're defined. And that can be not impossible, but just annoying to have to go look up, here's the order, got to get them in just the right way. Here, I can put the fields in any order that I want. And if I want to skip one, like an auto number field, I can skip it and not put it in the field list. And if I want to skip one, I think in the last recording I was looking at the end of it, we added owners and just put in a first name and a last name. We didn't put any address stuff in. You can do that. So let's try this one. Let's put in our first service category. I want to insert into the table service categories. 2, in my case. Yours probably not. Okay, remember I had to double name mine. Into service category 2, then the word values. I usually start a new line. Indentation is not a bad thing. Shows ownership. This is a continuation of the previous line. And in parentheses now, the values, whoops, I forgot. I put my field name up here. I don't want to put anything into the category ID because it's auto increment. You never, I don't want to say never, you rarely put anything into an auto increment field. So the only field I'm going to be filling in here is the category description. At this point, because the field is already described, is already created, I can capitalize it however I want. MySQL will deal with it. We discovered in my web data management class that if you don't capitalize those right and get in the habit of capitalizing those right, it'll come back to bite you. So be careful. MySQL doesn't care, but I'm getting you ready for next year. So this says insert some data into the category description. One thing I can do is simply put in, let's do oil change as a start. And this data that I'm putting in, capitalize it the way you want it to appear. Because that's the way it will be stored, because it's text. When you search for it, the searches are case insensitive. But you should enter it the appropriate way so that when it comes out on reports and comes out in queries, it's capitalized properly. End. At this point, press Control Enter, and I got my green circle. So now I'm going to do my select star command from service categories. And I can see my one record. Notice it already has a category ID. Already has a category ID. That's how you enter data into a table that has an auto number field. You list all the other fields. Kind of annoying when you got 20 other fields, but that's the way you have to do it so that you don't automatically assign a number to the auto number field. That should happen automatically. You shouldn't be doing it manually. If we wish, we can reuse this command. So now I'm going to do an engine repair. And if I want to, I can add multiple records at the same time. After the parentheses, put a comma, then another set of parentheses, and another record. So here we'll do a tune-up. And I can put in another one, and they don't have to go on separate lines. These are very small fields. You could just shoot them across, as long as it's readable. And I'll put one more in here. What else might we do? Wash and wax. And then on the last one, you put a semicolon. So the nice thing about the workbench is if you enter an insert command that works, you could reuse it. But the wisest way to do it is just enter in all of these records at the same time, each in their own set of parentheses, each with their own set of fields in the right order. Notice the quotation marks themselves are not inserted. If you're inserting dates, we talked about it briefly last time. I'm sorry, let me pause here. Questions about that? This is probably the most commonly used insert command because so many of our tables have auto number fields.
Do you have anything on the other side of values?
No. The records are surrounded with parentheses, separated by commas, except for the last one, which just has a semicolon. Again, you don't have to list every field in the table. So just as another example, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add a record to owners. Insert into owners. I think in class last time we inserted my name and Catherine's name, so you already have those. Would that prevent you from inserting them again? No. You would hope so, but that's not what MySQL does. That's what your GUI, not your GUI, that's what your business class is for. And very soon in programming logic, we'll learn how to do that. But here, because owners are auto number, auto increment, I can put people in as many times as I want to. And I'm going to check the field names real quick. I think it's just first name, last name. It is. So I want to put the first name in first and the last name in after that. Then the values. And since John just walked in, we'll pick on him. And the other nice thing to notice here, John has an apostrophe in his last name. If you surround your strings with quotes, you can put an apostrophe in between. If you, for some reason, want to put quotes inside, like I might want to make his first name John not having much luck here. John, grief, what am I doing? JP O'Leary, and now you kind of see a comment why you switch between single quotes and double quotes. Pretty much interchangeable. Most people, I like apostrophes, though I'm so used to typing quotes in other languages, I go right to them. But apostrophes don't require a shift, so they should be a little easier to type, but that's minor. But whatever you start with, I started with an apostrophe, I have to end with that. Syntax highlighting, I'm using the workbench here. The syntax highlighting makes them different, but they're really not treated any differently. And again, I can enter a second one. So we'll put in Matt because he's in my line of sight here. Semicolon. And you can just keep going. I've got SQL commands where there are hundreds of these. I have a pre-built SQL command that brings in all the tables, or all the states, excuse me. The state abbreviation, the state names, all that stuff. Well over 50 because the territories and the Canadian provinces are in there as well. All in one big insert command. And just keep going. There's no limit. Enter the command, and then if I take a look at everybody in the owners table, those two that I just entered should be at the end, and notice they are. Here's the JP with the quotes around it, the apostrophe inside the O'Leary, and it did put them in the right fields, and then everything else is null because I didn't say what to put in there. Now, if we had defined a field in our SQL create command to say that it's not null, then I would have gotten an error from SQL, an SQL error. I don't normally do that. Again, not null, meaning you can't leave this blank. That's a business rule. It doesn't, to me, belong in the database. It belongs in the business class. We can add as many records this way as we want. Questions? Yeah.
Is it normal to have that last record dominant being just a whole series of nulls?
Yeah, all of these programs do this. Those are null because I can click here, then choose edit and insert a record that way. This is a GUI version of, I can edit most of these records. Here's the edit button. I can say edit, and now it lets me change it. All right, so yes, that's normal. Access does the same thing, adds an end to a row to the end that's empty, so that, or not even empty necessarily. All of these are defaulting to null. If any of them had a default value like a state of Florida, then I would have Florida in there already. And it looks like a record, and you're right, it's a little confusing. I don't know if there's a way in the preferences to turn it off here. I don't normally edit data using the MySQL workbench. It's a way for me to look inside my database, but you've already heard me cussing about customers who look inside their database and start changing things manually and causing trouble. But it is possible. Here I just noticed that Florida is not capitalized right, so I could say edit, and it'll let me change it. And then I can say, I have to hit edit again. I don't even know how to do it. It tells you how often I do it. But it looks like it changed it for, oh, here's the apply button. And it actually creates the command for you. We're going to learn how to create that command ourselves in the next unit. What always interests me, and I know you probably can't see it, see if I can make it bigger. Yep. What always interests me is all these backticks. I think they have a name. I forget what it's called. Tilde. No, that's the squiggle thing. Anyways, why are those there? It is legal in MySQL to have field names, database names, table names with spaces in them. But when you do that, you have to put these little backticks. It's just right above your tab key on your keyboard. You have to put those backticks around them if there's spaces inside. And so when we ask MySQL, what command would you use to update this record, it puts all those in there just to be safe, because it doesn't want to check to see if there's a space. It just puts those in everywhere. What's also interesting to me is this is a numeric field. It's an integer, and they still put apostrophes around it. Thou shalt not. I want you to recognize the types of your fields. You should not be putting apostrophes around your numeric fields. If you're using a date, if you're putting in a date, so now it's done it and it's permanent. What I had before was just temporary. Go away. Now it's permanent. But if you're putting in date fields, I think I talk about it here somewhere. Here's the dates. MySQL, most database programs want their date in the YYMMDD format, which is ISO format with dashes in between. If you want the dashes, you have to put quotes around that. That's a rule. Otherwise, it tries to do subtraction and causes all kinds of trouble. If you don't want to type the dashes, you can leave out the quotes and just type them as one big long string of numbers. It gets kind of hard to read sometimes, though. Your choice. I don't care. Boolean values, either 0 or 1 or true or false. You can type the words true or false. MySQL will handle it. And if you want to leave a field that you designated, so if I wanted to type somebody else's name in here but leave the first name blank, well, I said I was going to give you the first name. If I want to leave it blank, you just type the word null in there. And it will, assuming it's nullable, it will leave it blank. And in my databases, except for the primary keys, everything's nullable in the database. Business rules figure out the rest. Other questions? Occasionally you're going to make some mistakes. And Val, if you don't mind, I'll pick on you. She entered some data and saw that there was a mistake. And so she just wiped out the table, rebuilt it. No, you didn't even wipe out the table. Deleted the records somehow. She deleted all the records and then re-entered them. You don't have to start over again if you make mistakes in your data. You can delete a single record like she did. Or, as I'll show you in a second, there is a way to update it and change it. We're going to learn much more about deleting and updating records and structure and all that kind of stuff in unit, I don't even know how I number these things, but in the 2 units from now, 3 units from now. We're going to do single table queries next, then multi-table queries, then updates. So we'll learn a lot about this. I'm just going to give you the bare basics here. The easiest way to delete a record is just to say delete from table. So I'm going to delete Matt's record here for no particular reason. So he's record number 12. It is important that you know the ID number or the key. It is possible, and we'll learn this in the future unit, to delete based on something else. Why can't I delete and say, delete everything where the last name is Daniak? Ooh, that sounds dangerous. How do I know he's the only one? You can do that, but MySQL prevents you from doing it unless you turn on the special features. So for this unit, let's not worry about that. We're going to delete everything by primary key, which means we're only going to be deleting one, right? Because the primary key is never going to be a duplicate. So if I need to delete Matt's record, I first need to know what his primary key is. His owner ID number is 12. I have to look it up. And if you're deleting it, you're probably already looking at it and say he shouldn't be in there. So I want to delete. And I forget, is it a from? Yep, from table name. And then on the next line down, you specify a where clause. We're going to see this in the next unit, in the single table queries unit. This is how we filter. I only want to delete where the owner ID is equal to 12. Owner IDs are integers, so you shouldn't put apostrophes around that. If you do, it will work. And I will cringe, and for the first one, mark it wrong, and from then on, just say, why are you putting apostrophes around integers? Because it works. Makes it easier. I want you to show me, prove to me that you recognize the field types of these things. So that should delete just one record. And again, I should see a green check mark down here when I'm ready to go. There it is. Got my green check mark. One row is affected. And so now if I come back up here and say, show me everything in the owners table, that's gone. Permanently. If you want him back in all his records, you got to re-enter it. And if I re-enter it, what ID number will he get? The next one. The 12th ID number, owner ID number, has been used, and even though I immediately deleted it, the database knows it's been used and will not use it again. So when I put him in, he's going to have a different ID number. Well, what if I already have a whole bunch of child records for him? He's the owner, and here's 6 slips that he has because he's rich and got 6 boats and stuff, and I deleted them. Well, first of all, I hope your GUI said, excuse me, you want to delete Matt. That means you're going to delete all of the 6 slips that he owns as well, all of those records. Your GUI is going to get involved and say, excuse me, there's child records for this parent. You don't want to delete him until, or it'll say, do you want me to delete the child records as well? But what if you forgot and you're in here and you're playing with the database and you just blew Matt away, and now I've got 6 orphan records out there? I can insert him, I believe. I've never tried this, but I'm pretty sure this is going to work. I can say insert into, and I don't even want you to copy this one. Owners. Owner ID. Ooh. First name, last name. I want him to have ID number 12. And it says, no, you have an error in your syntax. What's my error in my syntax? Owner IDs, oh, values. That's better. Whew. Now he's backing it at 12. This is new, as in within the last 10 years. I don't remember when I first recognized it because I never put values in an auto number field. And all of a sudden it would let me do it. I did it in class one day and I said, you can't do this. And it did it. So we can do it, but what you can't do is this. Why not? I just change the names. Duplicate entry 12 for primary key. It does recognize that there is already a number 12. So if you really want to, and you're so anal you can't stand the fact that owner number 5 was deleted and it's empty now, there is no owner number 5, the next time you enter a record, you could force them into position number 5. But nobody does it. And particularly when GUIs are involved, GUIs definitely aren't that anal, they don't care. And how would they know which ones are missing? We don't worry about it. This is an integer. It'll probably store up to 2 billion owners. I think it's going to be a while before I have 2 billion owner records in my database. Even if I delete them and don't reuse the numbers, they're still going to be a while. So we don't normally do that. So that's the delete command if you enter a record and the whole thing is goofy, or you enter in Matt's record twice, because I can delete the second one with owner ID 13 if I want to. Some of these records are kind of long, and if you haven't saved your data, it might be worth your time to update. You can do an update in the same way. And this gives you the generic version, but really all we ever change is, again, using the ID number. So John's in position 11, and let's say he's decided that he wants to get rid of the JP. So the first thing I'm going to do is show my owners again so I can actually see the data, and there's the JP. So I want to update his first name. Update table owners. And now you simply continue with a set command. Oop, doesn't even have to say table. Makes sense, we don't update anything else. Now we use the set command. What do you want to change? First name equal to just John. Now be careful here. Because again, if I try to issue this command, I might get lucky, you would get lucky, because my SQL will go, excuse me, this means update everybody's first name to John. Everybody. Because I didn't designate for who. I said in the owners table, set everybody's first name to John. Why would I do that? You wouldn't. You might have a Boolean field that initially is null and you want to set it all to true or all to false. You could do that and it'll go through your entire table and change them all. At Lions Camp, every year they have a special bus code that keeps track of what bus is this camper coming in on, and every year they want to wipe those out. So every year they run a command that says update campers set bus code equal to the empty string or null, and it just does them all. One line. Dangerous, but it works. What you should be doing is adding a where clause so that it only does one record. So that's a down and dirty quick update command. We'll learn the details about update in the future, but I used to have these out of my notes, and then students would say, well, geez, I entered all these records and a lot of data, and I've got one little flaw right here. Can I just change that piece? And I'd have to go look it up 4 chapters down the road, and so I just stuck the bare minimum in here. If you really mangled it, delete it, insert it again. If your table's all messed up, delete the table, start over. Because updating table structure is even more complicated. We'll save that for the next unit. So let's issue that command. No complaints. Show me everybody And owner number 11 now has the first name of John. Questions? Yeah.
Okay, so if you were building a database for somebody, you wouldn't normally put all these fields in for them, right? You would let them.
Wouldn't normally put what?
You wouldn't normally put all the actual fields in for them, right? Like John's name, or you would do that through you would let them do that through the GUI,
Yes.
because otherwise you could end up with duplicate records.
The only reason you still need to know how to do the insert command, because guess what? The GUI doesn't insert anything into the database. What you will learn, what you've sort of learned already in programming logic, is we create these table adapters that have SQL commands inside. Guess who gets to type the SQL commands? To insert a new record into the database. You, the programmer, get to do that. When you get to web data management, the user is going to say add a new user or add a new owner. And poof, up comes the owner form. You fill it all out, you hit save, and behind the scenes, you, the web data management programmer, have to write an SQL command to insert the new data into the database. So you're right, the GUI does all this. At least from a user's perspective, the GUI does all this. From a programmer's perspective, you got to do all this. You have to understand the insert command, the delete command, the update commands, the select commands, all the commands that we're learning in this class, you're going to use again in your programming classes to teach your programs how to do these things. You will also have the ability to go into the databases like we are right now and actually manipulate them. And I occasionally do that. I mean, in the systems class for Lions Camp, we want sample data. We want data to be there before we even have the GUI ready so that we can see that the GUI loads the data properly. So they manually entered 8 to 10 records into every one of their tables so that we could test. To manually enter them, this is manually entering from a programmer's perspective. You go into the database, especially a MySQL database, and issue SQL commands to do what you want to do. But once all that's done and the product's delivered, everything goes through the GUI. Even that command to wipe out all of those bus codes is in the GUI. There's a button that says clear the bus codes. Click, and it issues a update all to null command, and it does it. So the downside to teaching this RDD course in the same semester with Programming Logic Intermediate is you can't quite picture yet where it goes. But it's going into those table adapters that you've been briefly introduced to. It's going into those table adapters, and you're going to have to modify some of those, so knowing the syntax of SQL will help you. And you'll see that pretty quickly. Back to Lyle's question, because I think he's asking me, and now I'm thinking about it. This command that creates the table, never in my GUI. Why would I have a GUI that creates a table after I've launched the product and they're using it? Now we're going to create a new table using the GUI? No. The create table commands, I always enter manually, always. Create the table, then I modify my GUI so that it can read and write and delete stuff from that table. But all the insert commands, the select commands, the delete commands, the CRUD commands, create, read, update, delete, those are all done by GUIs. And when I say create there, I'm talking about inserting a new record like we did here. That's create versus read and update where we change things.
Because you use Lions Camp, so when they're done with their GUI, they'll go through SQL and delete all their sample data out of the.
We will do that. Yeah. Well, I know I wouldn't use the GUI. When we deliver, it won't be there in the first place.
You'll delete it.
With Lions Camp, we got a whole special different problem. They already have a database.
Right.
So part of what we have to do, or I have to do, depending on how the timing goes, is write another program that does nothing but translate the old data into the new format, because we're into third normal form. We've got a different structure. So somehow I've got to get their old data, 3,000 camper records, and probably 20,000+ medication records. Got to find a way to get it from the Access database into the MySQL database. I'm glad there's a bunch of geniuses in that class because they're going to help me figure out how to do that because that's the thing that scares me the most. One of the things that we don't talk about much in systems, because we're always talking about new projects, new projects, new projects. What if your new project is replacing an existing project? How do you transition from one to the other? At Lions Camp, it's a huge program. The last thing I want to do is just say, okay, as of today, you're no longer using the old one, you're using the new one. I can't rewrite it fast enough. I want them to have part of this, and that's part of our Agile philosophy as well, right? I want them to have part of the capability on the web as soon as possible. But that then means I've got two versions of the database, one that's in MySQL and one that's not. Ew. And two programs running against those databases. That'll be a challenge. Like I said, good thing I got geniuses working for me. Other questions? I like these questions. How does this fit into the real world? And I like how it ties into systems. And I like it's going to tie into everything you do. That's why we moved it up. That's why Skyward won't hire it if you can't spell SQL. Then use it. Because without it, you're not much good to them. At least a foundation. And you'll have that by the time you leave. All right, then the rest of today gives you about an hour of lab to work on all the stuff that we're working on this class. Let's go review that real quick. Got a lot of things because I gave you so much time to do those database design assignments that you now have a fair amount of overlap in your assignments. That's not where I want to be. Hey, your database design 1 and 2 assignments are already out there. Portable apps is due. Some of you haven't checked off, so let's if you got it working, just bring it up and I'll look at it and say, yep, it's working, and get your points. SQL build lab is already assigned. It is due on the 5th. Whoa. Okay. That lab is going to take advantage of what you just learned in a very relatively short lab. Create and insert, just to get some practice. So that's due on the 5th, which is Thursday. I'm not here Thursday, so due till midnight anyway. So that means I won't be here to help you. However, Reen has already volunteered to be here all day, anxious to answer your questions. Bring him food, because I can't pay him, unfortunately. Paul will be here. Harold will be here all day. There'll be somebody here from the beginning of RDD, I hope, until 7 o'clock at night for the last section of programming logic, even though I can't be here. Hopefully they will be. Trying to get them paid. So just because I'm not here, actually I would love for you to come in, because the last thing I want to do is pay Paul and Harold and not have anybody show up. So come in here, work, get some questions answered with them around, because you got this lab due. And then there's the SQL build part 1, which is due the 17th. Okay, I can live with that. Now it's time to do part 2. So remember the 17th. That's when part 1 is due, and part 1 is an ERD data dictionary. Part 2 is create tables, insert records, etc. Take a quick look. Talking about this SQL build and populate command. These two have already been assigned. Those are Alexamar, Marina, Henry Books, Premier Products, designs only. No SQL. This one has you build my employees and customers and vehicles. This is a rental shop. And part 1 is ERD data dictionary. Part 2, I need to modify this. I do not want Microsoft Word. I want a SQL file, .SQL extension, to create the tables and add at least 3 records to every single table. Not a terribly long assignment. I want to push you to the 24th. That's the week before spring break. An advanced warning, just so you know, on Tuesday, a week from today, I want to start the next unit, single table queries. That's when things get fun. Building tables, that's all well and good, but the fun stuff's getting the data back out. And so on the 10th, I'm going to be starting the next unit. So the longer you got this stuff hanging over your head, the more it starts to overlap. And that's just this class. 24th? Can always turn it in early. Done. I'll now be quiet and you can start working on whatever you got to work on. And I'll be here.